Tonight I want to talk about the passing of an extraordinary woman, a woman who captured the hearts of Americans across every spectrum. Barbara Bush was one of the most popular people in America, and for good reason. One of only two women in the history of our country to be both the First Lady of the United States and also the mother of a president. She consistently used those platforms that, as she would say, God graced her with, for good causes. There are many stories, but one I'd like to recount was shortly after President Bush's election, she went to an AIDS hospice here in Washington, D.C. And this was a time when the AIDS epidemic was a huge crisis, but frankly, there was stigma attached to it and a lot of nervousness about the disease. Barbara Bush picked up a baby with AIDS and cradled that baby. She hugged and kissed kids with AIDS. And the message was very clear. There should be no stigma. We have nothing to fear. It's time for us to embrace these people. And her quote that day was everlasting. Her quote was very simple. She said, "There is a need for compassion." She spoke to the heart. She also used that platform she had to empower people through literacy. This was one of her great causes. She believed that the world would be a much better place if everyone could read and write and comprehend. And the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy continues to do amazing work. She's touched the lives of so many young people, so many adults, and brought them into a new world through literacy. And she accomplished a lot more in her distinguished life. She was dignified, straightforward, witty, well-intentioned. She had a habit of speaking her mind freely, and sometimes that got her in a little bit of trouble. But frankly, when she did that, almost all of us nodded our heads in agreement. Interestingly, her Secret Service code name was Tranquility. For anyone who knew her personally, that might have seemed to be an odd code name. Now, probably she chose that code name herself, by the way. She wasn't always tranquil. In fact, she was sometimes feisty, famously so. One story that I think shows some of her feistiness was when she was having dinner one night with the President of the United States, 43, happened to be her son, and in front of many others, including staff, she commented critically on his table manners, which, of course, she loved, and so did he. The night before she left us, that feistiness was on display when Barbara Bush, instead of asking for pain medication, asked for a glass of bourbon, and with a smile, took a sip. But I think that name Tranquility was also fitting for her. It was fitting for her because she was a calming influence. She made things more tranquil. I saw that firsthand at the White House, where she made life easier for everybody. I had the pleasure of first getting to know her when I was doing volunteer advance work for her husband, then Vice President Bush. I traveled overseas with them, traveled around the country some with them, and got to see the calming influence she had on everyone around her. Later, when I was in the counsel's office at the White House, I got to see how she made everybody feel more comfortable, including me as a young White House staffer, encouraging me, knowing people, saying hello to them, talking to them, ensuring that the morale was good. Tranquility. It was helpful then. It was helpful all through her life that she was there as the rock, as the adult. My wife, Jane, and I had recently become married. We had a child when I worked at the White House, and Barbara Bush couldn't have been more gracious. She's been a dear friend ever since. In fact, a few years later, when I first ran for public office, I ran for the United States House of Representatives in Cincinnati, Ohio, 2nd Congressional District of Ohio. She came to campaign for me. And this was early in 1993. Recall that in 1992, George H.W. Bush, 41, had lost his reelection. We did a political event in Cincinnati. We took her to Skyline Chili, which is a famous place in my hometown and all around Southwest Ohio. Although Skyline Chili and Cincinnati Chili is an acquired taste, She at least acted like she really enjoyed it. She wore the bib, and people loved it. Maybe most importantly for me, while she was there, she cut a radio ad for me. In that radio ad, she said, "I always enjoy having Skyline Chili with Rob Portman when I'm in Cincinnati." She said some other things that were kind, and frankly, as I look back on that race, there were 10 people in the primary. My name identification was about 6%, half of whom thought I was somebody else who had a similar name. And I think that radio ad played a huge role in my first election and my ability to be here today and to be able to serve the people of Ohio. Barbara Bush was an important reason I won. In that election, by the way, I stuck with George H.W. Bush, who just lost his re-election, when others were being critical, because I had so much respect for him and so much respect for her. And frankly, her popularity, I think, was an important reason that I was able to win. In recent years, I've made a habit of making a pilgrimage to Maine every summer to see them, sometimes Houston during the winter as well, but going to Maine has been a wonderful way to connect with them. I've gone with my daughter, gone with Jane, my wife, a few times. I sit with them. President Bush loves to give advice still, and I love to get it. Barbara Bush loved the political gossip, and we loved to talk about people and things and what was going on in Washington. She was curious, engaged, sharp, up to speed. She loved George H.W. Bush so deeply. And she called him sometimes FLFW, former leader of the free world. Again, her wit was on display everywhere she was. I remember being with them last summer on the porch. She always insisted on eating lunch outside, and the waves were coming in, the Maine coast, the sun reflecting on the waves. Family was always around. That's when she was happiest. I'll certainly miss those moments we shared and the encouragement and the very candid advice that she was never hesitant to offer. But as we mourn the loss of this authentic and admired American, we should all find comfort in remembering the way she lived and the incredible legacy that she leaves. She never ran for political office herself, but in a way she represented all of us. And I think she represented the best in all of us. I think that's one reason she was so popular. And she showed us how to handle the spotlight and responsibility with grace, with dignity, with the incredible way that she, again, was able to bring tranquility wherever she was. No wife, no mother, no grandmother was more devoted to her family, and her unconditional love for her children, including the 43rd President of the United States, with whom she had a great relationship. Her true partnership with George H.W. Bush in service to the country all the way through, from the time that he was an 18-year-old Navy pilot through his career as president and after. It's an inspiration, that unconditional love and that partnership. An inspiration certainly to me and to Jane as a role model, but an inspiration to all of us as Americans. I know I speak for all of my colleagues here in the United States Senate as we pay tribute to her and also send our condolences to the entire Bush family. Barbara Bush is now in a better place, and I can imagine her smiling, surrounded by family, including her beloved daughter, Robin, who she lost as a child. She's on a coast somewhere, dignified, witty, and feisty all at once, and she's earning that code name, tranquility. I yield back.